Good evening to everyone in Alberta, Canada, and beyond. It is Wednesday, May 15th, 2024, and I'm Kerry Lambert, and I welcome you to an online webinar, Evening of Solutions for a New Alberta, brought to you by the Alberta Prosperity Project, also known as APP. APP's purpose is to educate, inspire, and unite all Albertans, businesses, and organizations to protect the prosperity, individual freedoms, rights, and self-determination by empowering the Alberta government to restructure Alberta's relationship within or without Canada. And of course, we wouldn't be able to do this without your help. So if you can, please share this webinar on various social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Rumble, but you can still share it to other social programs like Telegram, Threads, etc. As well as after this live, we're also on other video and audio sites like Apple, Spotify, BitChute, Vimeo, etc., etc. We have a sponsor again tonight. Tonight's sponsor is Solve Energy. I'm just going to put their little banner up over here. Give me 1 second. They are amazing for being able to sponsor us. There you go. There's their banner. Solve Energy, the switch to solar power is happening right now across Western Canada and globally. Take advantage of up to $5,600 in grants for homeowners and a 30% tax credit for businesses. Join the movement by generating clean, renewable electricity from the sun. Solve Energy is Western Canada's top trusted provider and installer. Let me show their little commercial here.
We're not just a company, we're a solar revolution. With years of experience, we've harnessed the sun's energy to make a positive impact on our planet and your wallet. Our cutting-edge installation process and sustainable solutions empower you to harness the sun's limitless potential, reducing your energy bills. You may be wondering, do I get enough sun for solar panels? Well, fear not. Our experts can evaluate your location and tell you if it's solar friendly. We use multiple technologies that allow us to accurately determine if your roof is a good fit for solar. How can I go solar for no money down? What are the qualifications of that? Don't worry, we are here to help. Our team at Solve handles the entire process from start to finish, so you won't have to deal with those headaches that come with permitting, design, engineering, or dealing with the utility company. Feel free to reach out to our team at Solve.
Once again, thank you so much for Solve Energy. To find out more about Solve Energy, go to their website at solveenergy.ca or send an email to info@solveenergy.ca. So tonight, I'm really excited about tonight's webinar. We're talking with our brand new CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project, Jonathan Baines. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Normally, if you've watched these videos before, the webinars, I usually go into what's going on in terms of the website and what events and that, rather than doing it double time. We're going to be talking to Jonathan about this and basically talking about a lot of the programs and how he got involved and what APP is hoping to accomplish, at least within the next foreseeable future. And we also have another guest that should be joining us if he's able to. It's David Laskowski. He'll be talking more about the actual referendum and what we're doing with the referendum question, et cetera, et cetera. So again, tonight, if you're able to and want to ask some questions, this is a live webinar, and all you need to do is put 3 question marks before your comment or question. That way it's flagged, and then I can bring it on. And of course, don't forget to share. Please share this video going out there. The more people that are aware of what APP is able to do and how to get involved, even better. And with that, I'm now going to bring on Jonathan Baines. Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
I am good, Kerry. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. So we've been talking now for quite a while. You were involved with APP even before even before you were asked to be the interim or the CEO, I guess. So I just want to at least acknowledge Chris Scott and the job that he did as the interim CEO, and really, the baton was passed on from Dr. Dennis Modry to Chris to lead this initiative, the whole APP project. Chris didn't realize how big of a project it is. I'm sure, Jonathan, you're now realizing how big of a project this is too. And so I would just like to say thank you again, Chris, for stepping up and doing what he was able to do for the amount of time that he was able to. he definitely got the word out that APP was here, and everything that APP was involved with, and being involved in the meetings, and as well as a referendum. And of course, he had to step down. A lot of issues that he had back at home, back at his business, kind of just made it so that he just couldn't devote enough time to doing APP. And of course, we needed someone to step in and able to do the amount of time and the amount of effort that really needs to push this whole referendum, the question on the referendum on independence in Alberta. And again, so little golf clap for Chris. Thank you so much for Chris for being able to do what you did there. And now I'd like to welcome again Jonathan Bates. So Jonathan, do you want to maybe just tell us a little bit about your bio? Maybe just tell us, where you came from and that, and then get into how you got involved with APP.
Yeah, so there's a ton of different sort of angles I can give on our story, as everyone could. But I grew up in South Africa, in Cape Town. It was apartheid South Africa at the time, so obviously people were segregated at that point on based on the color of their skin, essentially, which was crazy if we think about it. But that's how we lived. The government we grew up in a all white neighborhood. Our school we went to was single race schools. The sports we played was single race sports. And that's just how life was. And we weren't technically allowed into other areas, and so, so we grew like that. I obviously, as I became a teenager, you start to ask more questions, and you have big questions around what happens in school and why you're not allowed to ask certain questions. And I do remember asking a question, a history teacher at school, and she was a young university teacher, I guess, and she went on a rail against the government at the time. And I remember within a week, she just disappeared. We had no idea where she was. So
Really?
You can imagine in my mind, I'm thinking, what the heck?
Wow.
And no explanation whatsoever. Now, all sorts of ideas happen in line with what she was telling us. And so, I had these things that maybe the world that we've been told is not all it is. And so we had friends in our church. We had a lot of friends who across the color barrier, and so they were just our good friends. So I remember sneaking to their houses at nighttime when we were teenagers. The act of rebellion was a great amount of fun. I remember having dinner with my best friend, and he was Indian, and so he lived in a different neighborhood. And so now we lived in quite a nice part of Cape Town, in a place called Constantia. And so I'm having dinner, and these guys they've fed me the hottest curry you can imagine, I think as a joke, just to see how I would react. But the conversation became awkward because we were living in the same road that my best friend's dad and his family were kicked off during apartheid. So it's like, imagine the awkwardness of that conversation. And he was a high-ranking doctor. And so I just grew up in this world, just questioning government, questioning authority. I didn't enjoy school. I didn't see it necessarily as an important or necessary part of my life. So I rebelled against that every time I got a chance, to be honest. Went into college. I went into theological Bible college. And in that time, I ended up being exposed to a lot of other things that have been happening in South Africa, and got involved in working with the International Electoral Commission in South Africa's first so-called democratic election in 1994, which is when Nelson Mandela was released. And so I was helping with the election. Just being exposed to so much stuff, I thought, wow, the world is quite different to the way the world is. And then working with people from the townships who had been told a very different story about the world, and also weren't completely true either. And just, I thought, wow. So we grew up. I got married. We had 2 children. I got married when I was about 20. I was 20. We had 2 children. We got a job in the Eastern Cape. We lived on a farm, and we were surrounded by some awesome people. We had one of the farm killings happened in our sort of neighborhood farm, where the neighbors were shot, and gunned down with AK-47s and stuff. And so although we were in a safe environment because we had sort of security people around us, really good farmers and stuff who were trained. Yeah, that's a longer story, but essentially the long and short of that is we said, look, I'm not sure. We were young, we had no money, we weren't like armed to the teeth. So like, how are we going to defend ourselves? And we had met a group of Canadian missionaries at the time, and they told us about Canada. So we thought, wow, that sounds like an awesome place to live.
Yeah.
So we tried to immigrate to Canada at the time, but that was at a time when you actually have some amount of points, and we were too young and too broke to qualify to immigrate to Canada. So when I was 29, 30, we immigrated to England. My family was from England originally. And my sort of work life really started off in England. And I got involved consulting and became sort of a senior change strategist, business transformation consultant, doing a lot of work with central government, policing, and some of the top universities, and helping manage large-scale transformation and change. And at that point, we loved England. We loved the people, but found that our entrepreneurial appetite wasn't being fed in England. We didn't feel it was encouraging of risk taking and creating businesses and that sort of thing. So we then had an opportunity to come to Canada. So we took that opportunity, and we immigrated here in 2012. Once again, consulting, spending a lot of time, with large government organizations, helping them go through change. And then, Canada, you may not realize it, but you guys had done an awesome job during the 2008, 2009 recession, meaning that, the recession only really hit Canada probably a few years later, like 2012, 2014, when we immigrated here.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of contracts shut down and stuff like that. But in 2017, I had a chance to start working with a number of First Nations. So I took that opportunity. I loved it. And have spent since 2013 till this last year, March, I've been spending time working with various First Nations, mainly in BC and the Yukon, helping set up economic development and operating as a CEO for First Nations, helping them and serving them to create an economy. So I loved that. It wasn't easy. It has its huge ups and downs, as with most things, especially things related to government. And we had my consulting background had exposed me to some of the operations of government and how the mechanics of government work, particularly around large-scale change. So, for example, I was a change consultant on Europe's largest police change program, which is like a £2 billion program. Pounds like a lot more money than dollars. Where they were implementing the surveillance state in London. Obviously, it wasn't called that. Or, it initially was called they're rolling out CCTV programs. It was called the C3I program, Communication Command and Control.
Okay.
And I was the last change director on the project. And just working with change teams. And I remember working with some of the teams and they're saying, how do we get the public at large to support what we're trying to write? And I'd be in a lot of those sorts of meetings. And that's sort of what was my primary skill set. And the general response was, we have to scare the absolute shit out of them. So I don't know if you want to edit that word out later on. So the strategy of government, primarily to get people to buy into their strategy, is to normally terrify them. And so we did that. The term was shifted from CCTV to CCTV cameras. So immediately people worried about their safety. So, oh yeah, you got a solution for us, which is surveilling every step we make. Well, if you're going to help us feel safe, we buy into that. There's some pandemic scenario type planning with Ebola at the time, and that was sort of cancelled largely because media weren't on board and were sort of doing the role of what media probably should be doing, is sort of challenging the narrative from government. So I got a little bit of a heads up from some folk that I've been working with in December 2019 that there was this sort of pandemic coming down the pipeline, and that it wasn't all that it was set up to be, and just to be very careful for myself and my family as it was going to be rolled out.
Okay. Yeah.
And then what I started seeing very quickly in 2020 was the sort of handiwork of the I would historically been involved in, not directly with bad stuff, but those were the teams that I worked in. So when you start seeing huge campaigns from the government sending out information on numbers of COVID deaths, so when they present that information in isolation, it creates a certain emotional reaction from a huge population. And I understood very quickly what they're doing. You provide information out of context, it's very quick, it becomes a pretext. And so so I understood the mechanics, and it was out of the game book of how we manage large scale transformation and change. And so I thought, oh man, this is not going well. And then I saw how Canada responded to us, and I thought, oh man, somehow it looks like Canada has bought into, without sounding conspiratorial, a tyrannical globalist agenda. And Canada seemed like it's the pilot program for that, that agenda. I don't necessarily give the leadership of Canada huge kudos as being smart enough to think of that. I think they're like suitably trained in the drama of the acting of that whole thing out. And I just thought, wow, surely everyone's going to see this through this. And I had a consulting contract at the time, which would have been a very lucrative contract. And all the senior partners were having a meeting that I was being invited to as the final stage of the interview. And for that, they said, well, have you been vaccinated? So I said, well, are you seriously asking me this question? You guys are smart people. You understand how this communication engine works. Why are you asking me the question? And I went through the debates, and these are Canadian folk, and I'm an immigrant. And, so I pointed to all the science, facts, and everything else that was challenging to the mainstream sort of narrative. Yeah. And at the end of that conversation, which was sort of the first of many, was at the end of the day, well, we've got to trust our government, don't we? And so I realized, oh man, coming from another country, I have zero trust in my government. I want to see them being accountable before I trust them. I want to see them doing responsible stuff with our money, making sure that we can, live a good life. And I realized, wow, there's this dominant culture that I was unaware of, that people ultimately just believe everything the government tells them. Yeah. And I realized, look, Canada wasn't that far from South Africa. South Africa had a state-sponsored media. It was called the SEC. Canada has a state-sponsored media engine. And I realized, look, these are awesome people, beautiful people, have maybe slightly different political leanings, but they just believe the story they told. And wow, that's probably one of the most dangerous places to live. So we started feeling some issues around security for our family. You could see the trajectory of where we were going. We were in BC.
I was going to ask if you were in Alberta at that point. And
that was getting worse and worse by the day. We gave it a go. We involved, a small group of us got involved in wanting to help turn around the BC Conservative Party. So we gave that a good shot, and we did well to get it out of the sort of state that it was in, and we sort of helped just accelerate that into a new space, but we didn't achieve everything we wanted to. So I sort of said, okay, I've done my bit. All the best, but I need to go somewhere safer and better for my family, where I can do some stuff. But in that journey, I've been following the APP primarily because the APP as a movement had planned on actually that I could ascribe to, as far as how do we actually protect the individual sovereignty, and I could see within the APP that had been spelt out, and I think you'd built an awesome organization out of that. And so we said, look, if and I'm not a party political person, but I said, look, the other piece of that puzzle that needs to happen to protect, the citizens of a province, Danielle Smith absolutely has to win the election. If she didn't win the election, we would have had to look to move to another country just for the safety and protection of our own family. Because this is the first time we've seen this sort of stuff. So if you speak to immigrants, you'll very quickly understand most of the reason they're immigrants is because they've left places that Canada is turning into. So Danielle Smith won the election. She implemented the Alberta Sovereignty Act, in Canada. And so we said, okay, well, that's an important piece of the puzzle, because now you've got a government in place that's not going to be undermining its citizens at every stop. And obviously, it's more complicated than that because you've got executive layers and you've got all sorts of people within the government who would be looking to undermine that initiative at every single turn. And I understood the mechanics of that happened because I was part of that same engine in the United Kingdom. So, people refer to it as the deep state, but essentially it's the government bureaucracy that block the objectives of politicians. And unless the politicians are already strong and understand how to do that, they're going to be effective until the next election cycle. And then bureaucracy of government doesn't really care, to be honest, because at the end of the day, they're going to be there forever. The politicians are going to come and go. So the attitude is we're the ones holding this country together. We're going to find a way to work in spite of the politicians, in spite of the elected officials. And that's literally the mindset of how that happens. And so, so we said, oh, we're going to move to, we bought our sight unseen with the realtor doing a tour on an iPhone. We said, okay, we'll go there. It was a bit of a reno job. We thought we had like a 2-month reno job, and we're still doing it a year later. So and we volunteered. We joined, and just to the end part of that quote. So we volunteered. We live in South, just outside Calgary, DeWinton, Oaknox sort of area. So we emailed APP and said, hey, have you got a group in the area that we can connect with and join? And we connected with an awesome lady from APP, Lorna. And so she just called a meeting together. We had a meeting with folk, and I being leader of the chapter, because if I asked to join the group, and now I'm the chapter leader. So I'm thinking, oh crap, okay, we better start doing something. So that was awesome. But it was my lens is I look at organizations and institutions from the lens of what's actually happening behind them, in order for these, what's, a bit like a doctor, you're seeing the symptom, and I quite quickly understand what's happening behind the scenes. So I volunteered. I said, I can get involved in helping on the communication side. So I joined the communication team, and, and what I was doing was saying is the movement or is the project responsive to some of the gifts and contributions I've got to make? And they were. It was just awesome. And I thought, wow, okay, so if I'm being received as an individual, I'm new to Alberta, no one knows me from Adam. If I can just serve in whatever capacity, and they welcome me, I thought, well, that's all I need. So and then so I thought that was it. Because I'm working, I had work and jobs and everything else. So it's like I've got to look after my family. So that was it, and I'll just do this on the side, and I'm still doing it on the side. But then I heard Scott was going to be stepping down. I thought, oh dang, we just joined this movement now, and some of the guys said, well, have you got any interest in helping us? So I said, yeah, as long as I help, I'd help in whatever way I could. I'm not looking for another job per se, but the more I connect with people in this movement, the more passionate I become about what's possible and we can do. And the more I see what's happening with global and federal governments, the more passionate I am to do this for my kids and my grandkids. I've got my grandkids, my kids, they stay on the same property as us. And I need to create a future for them that is going to be safe, and where they can be who they are, they're be forced into becoming something else. And that's something worth fighting for.
Well, that's awesome. And that just goes to show, you have a lot of experience with a bunch of different things. You've actually lived in an area of the world that you you had to get out of, right? So there's that, and you actually see the parallels which are happening with here in Canada, especially if you've gone through the situation in BC, and then you moved over to here and you got yourself involved. And how many times have our listeners heard us say, get involved? And you stepped up to the task and got involved to the point where we've really only had a few good conversations, but I've been very impressed with the way that you think, the way you articulate, and maybe the breaking up the internet here is probably not the best to show our members how great you are in terms of able to discuss points. But like I said, I when I heard that Chris was stepping down, I'm just, for people that don't really know exactly what I do, I mean, a lot of people just see me as the face doing the webinars, and that's it. But I probably try and do everything that I can with APP. I'm on the ops committee. I'm on the communications. I help deal with some of the strategy in terms of the website and communications and all that. And but only because it's that necessity. You have to step up and you have to be able to do a certain task, and it's good to be able to talk to people about that. And it would be even better if we had a group of people that did step up and were able to volunteer for this. And the volunteers that we have right now are amazing. I cannot say enough good stuff about the people that are chapter leaders, the people that are on the committees, the people that I talk to in our ops meetings, and everyone has that goal, and everyone knows that we have to get to a referendum on independence. And I think that is, if you look at that, and no matter what happens out on the sides here, as long as you keep that as your focus, that we need to get to that referendum. And we're talking about doing pension right now. That's a big focus for us. And likewise, there's policing that's coming up there. We're going to be talking in the future, near future probably, about the taxation and employment insurance and all these topics that the provincial governments have the jurisdiction over. It's just that I'm going to say we've been lazy, or maybe just have we been apathetic. We just haven't really done the need in order to go further, because we've just assumed for so long that the government knows what they're doing. And now that we kind of see where the direction of the government is going, we need to we need to get in and say, wait a minute, I've got questions. We need, in order to be able to do something important about this and talk to other people and get people involved that can strategize and are specialists in the area. And I think that's something that APP has been doing fairly well. Again, I'll emphasize this 1,000 times again. APP is not a political organization at all. We don't have an affiliation with the UCP or the NDP or any other acronym out there. We really are a grassroots movement. And the only reason we're doing anything really with the UCP is because they are the government in power. And if it was the Wild Rose, we would be doing the same thing. If it was the NDP, we'd be doing the same thing. And that in itself makes me cringe. But that's the reality of it, is that you have to use the tools that we've been given. And if it ended up that we actually would have to try and work with the NDP to try and gain independence, or at least give these conversations about pension and policing and all that, we know what they would end up saying. But at the same time, we would still be talking till we were blue in our face in order to get that across. And I think that is the important thing, that we've got the UCP government right now that at least listens to us. Are we in their ear? I think so. I think there's a lot of stuff that we do talk about that they are aware of, including pension. APP is not officially part of the pension plan group that I'm involved with, but we're definitely kind of going side by side. So it's APP's mandate is part of that, is to do pension. And here we've got a group that is actually doing the pension. if there was another group out there that was specifically looking at getting rid of the RCMP and making their own municipal policing, I'm sure APP would be along that side track too. So I've rambled quite a bit for that, but I think it's important to note that that's what APP's mission is, and Jonathan has come in with a lot of previous experience dealing with government, dealing with communication, and he has a good tool set going further that I know that we'll be able to make that work. And one of the things that Jonathan came in with right away was a Support 5 initiative. And this was an idea that I think everybody kind of had an idea that, what do we need in order to do this? We need to raise some money. We need to get some volunteers. We need to get the word out. And Jonathan just came up with this concept all wrapped up in a little ball, and it's called the Support 5. And I'm going to get Jonathan to talk a little bit more about how that idea came up with, and then what the idea actually is.
So to wind back, is how do we influence? How do we create influence to become sovereign? So
Yes.
some people don't even know what the word sovereign means, but sovereign essentially is just it's not something that we're given by the government. It's something that every single individual is given by our Creator as a part of being human. It's that ability to determine our own future and then experience the consequences of our actions, whether they're good or bad. And so at the moment, we have a government in Canada that is imposing its will on top of us, where we're our own ability to decide and to is being removed every single day. And it has a media engine that tells Canadians what it is useful to that end. And so sovereignty, is not a fight like for independence in itself. What we see is we want to be able to be prosperous, sovereign individuals, living our lives and growing our families and building our businesses with interference from the government, and without the government taking our money and taking our resources and abusing our children and abusing people who have problems and misusing their influence. So the goal is around having that free, prosperous life. What we're trying to do is we recognize that it's highly unlikely that we will ever get to that level of freedom and prosperity while we're in a system of Canada that continues to reach into our lives from the federal government point of view. Canada is a massive country. Eastern Canada, they have different issues, different population densities and whatever else. And Western Canada is so different. And yet they're making decisions almost for every piece of our lives. So the question is, well, how do we affect that change? So the Alberta Prosperity Project has got the right direction. We want to be and prosperous and sovereign either within Canada, which means we need to somehow change the relationship that we have with Canada. And if that's not likely, we need to be willing to declare independence and go on our own and make it happen and experience the prosperity and the consequences of our own actions, because that's what it means to be sovereign. So the question is, we have a rule of law and Canadian law by citizens, so we're not going to have some bloody revolution where we go, like has happened in other parts of the world. So the question is, how do we do? Well, there are laws. There's the Clarity Act. There's a process of referendum on independence that we could get to. In order to do that, we need a lot of people. And so one of the challenges with conservative people is we don't naturally aspire to controlling other people's lives. We're actually quite happy living our lives just alone, and we'll get on with that. People who aspire to controlling other people's lives tend to want to move into positions of government, whether it be municipal, provincial, or federal, or whatever sort of level, where they're going to have control over other people's lives. That for me is absolutely diabolical. To do that. But because conservatives tend to not be that way inclined, we've left those diabolic people to literally take charge of our government at all levels, school boards and whatever else. And we've sort of, we've been too busy doing something else to get involved. And so now you've had 30, 40, 50 years of sort of being sort of on the outside of how society actually functions as conservative people. And we've let go. I would say that we have to somehow repent and make that right and say, look, we've given people who do not have our good interests in mind, we've given them the authority and leverage to rule us and be our bad overlords. The other side of conservative people is we're incredibly effective. So when we get our minds to it, we can actually achieve incredibly effective things. I would far rather drive a car that was designed by a conservative engineer than a liberal engineer, if I'm going to be honest. Because it's not about an ideology. It's around actually what we do that actually makes it work. It's where the idea meets with reality. And I think conservatives are good at that. Conservatives tend to be quite opinionated on specific issues. And where we come from is liberals will unite over just the general ideology of us controlling the world. You know what I mean? Whereas conservatives, we unite over literally any disagreement. It's a bit like the Catholics versus the Protestants. The Protestants keep dividing and disagreeing and arguing, whereas the Catholics stay united because they've just got one thing. The Pope will hold us together and the Church will hold us together. So it's a bit like that. And so, running a conservative movement is like herding cats. And so for me, the Alberta Prosperity Project and the vision that it's always had around a prosperous Alberta within or without Canada is a big enough umbrella to attract a wider audience. And so when I look at this, we call it a project. I like the term trying to build a large movement. We're not trying to build an hierarchical institution. And by definition, a movement is from the ground up. It's people taking ownership and people connecting with people and reforming those communities that have been broken by governments that have required a sort of overdependency on the state, as it were. So we've got to sort of recover what it means to actually build those communities. And so if we can do that, we have a movement that grows exponentially rather than by addition. Because it's not based on one or two leaders at the top who sort of call the shots and everyone gravitates around them, although the leadership is important, but a movement actually grows from the bottom. So we need a budget so that we can continue to build the tools and hold events and equip people to all become leaders. And the more leaders we can have, the better and the stronger our movement's going to be. So so Support 5 essentially is a strategy is to build the biggest movement possible. And how do we, and a movement by definition is messy. It has a lot of other sub-movements and people who go off and do their thing. But in general, we're all going in the same direction. So that's absolutely fine. There's other groups that, have slight differences, and that's fine, but I'm pretty convinced we're all in the same direction. So the Support 5 initiative was, we need a financial model that we can rely on that provides consistency of revenue. And so we can now, have a budget. We can fix the website. We can, create tools, have videos and do all those sorts of things. We can hold events and invite things to, invite people to. And we need budgets for that. That doesn't, we can do so much out of thin air, but we at some point need a budget to grow this movement. And so the question is, well, do we rely on individual big sponsors, which is sort of a lot of how big government works? And we're not going to turn away anyone's gift, but that's a high risk proposition. You may have someone in organizations, institutions, you often have someone come along and say, I'll give you $10 million if you do this, this, and this, and this, in which case the organization becomes captured quite quickly. If we have a model, which is a typical internet model where you pay a subscription each month and everyone does that at a small level, it's not a huge cost, but it's a cost that a lot of people pay rather than a big cost that a few people pay. that
Yeah.
provides a far more robust, sustainable, and scalable sort of revenue model for the movement. So that's where we're asking. We're starting with all the members. We're saying, look, we thank you for donating, and that's great, and please do that. But we're asking people if they could commit to a monthly $5. $5 automatic sort of transfer just comes out of your bank account each month, and most people won't see that. It's like the price of a fancy
Coffee.
Starbucks coffee.
Yeah.
So that's one thing we're introducing that'll hopefully get us to a financial position where we can now really start to invest in growing the movement. And when I say growing the movement, I'm talking about growing people. So the other part of that is looking at our members and saying, look, we want 5 minutes of your time each week. Hopefully you're going to be reading our newsletter, but we want you to go to our social media posts, and we want you to have a look at them. We want you to like them. We want you to comment on them, and we want you to share them with your network. So that'll have a very significant impact on sort of the algorithm, as well as engaging people more in the process of just being educated about the information that's out there. And the reason that's critical is, as you see with these movements, is that when you have these COVID mandates, and people are just having their businesses and families, everything just decimated, you get a lot of momentum around a movement, and you get a lot of supporters and a lot of people signing up and that sort of thing. But the moment the emergency has stopped, what happens is the movement slows down, and people become a little bit more apathetic and think, okay, maybe we get better. Or we have another scenario with Pierre Polyev doing well in the polls, and so people think Polyev comes in, he'll save the day, and we'll be fine, and we don't need to make too big a deal about that. And that's a little bit of an indication that most people have no clue about these other things that are transpiring like constantly. There's some legislation that have been passed in Canada which are absolutely tyrannical, are incredibly dangerous now, but people don't know about them because they're done very quietly. There is a bait and switch. Oh, this act is about protecting kids. When in the meantime, it's absolutely about controlling your world. So we need people to engage with the content. We're asking them to like, comment, and share. And the last part is to really make the movement stronger. We're asking people to with other five other people, 5 friends. Now, that may not actually be easy for a lot of people. Not everyone actually has 5 friends, if to be honest. But within the movement, there's 5 other people within the chapter, or 3 other people within the chapter, and you just need 3 people to get together. As a 3, you say, can the 3 of us find another 2-3 people that we can invite, and hey, we've got a free meet place, Starbucks or whatever, and we want to have a talk about this project. We want to see where people are, and we want to know if they understand the sort of dire situation we're in. And we want to show that we're there to support them. We're not there to argue and show them how brilliant we are, or get them to subscribe to our ideology or whatever else. And so at that level, people don't really care what you know until they know that you care. And so that's the difference between a movement versus an institution. And so we're wanting a movement where people actually connect. And so I had a meeting today with some folk from different cultures. One person was from, I think, Sweden. The other person was from Philippines. And I know from being from Africa, when we get together with people, normally there's food involved and drink, and we just socialize in that way quite easily, because culturally that's sort of more the way it's done, and that sort of community thing gives you strength. It allows you to sort of form a network of support around other people, and not everyone has to agree with everything. And so for me, if we can do those 3 things, we start to build the seeds of what I think could be a very significant movement. Let's get everyone involved in giving a small monthly contribution of $5. A lot of people we're seeing are giving $100 or $25, which is great. Let's spend 5 minutes a week just going onto our online, accessing the information and sharing and liking and posting that.
Yeah.
And let's find a way to engage with 5 friends. So what we did with our chapter, we had a chapter meeting on Tuesday night. We said, okay, we're going to start meeting once a month. And between our meetings, what we're going to ask you is to have small meetings, small breakout groups with 5 people. And in those 5, you're going to have 2 or 3 new people. And we just want you to start engaging with the community and supporting them. Whether they agree with you or not doesn't matter. It's just around sort of developing that reconnection in the community. So that's my hope. Like at the end of the day, there's a very real chance that things could go really badly in Canada. There is a real chance, I know we don't like to admit it, that the Liberal NDP coalition could confuse the population and find a way to keep being our overlords as another minority of government. That's not impossible. You had, I think I saw statistics somewhere like 4.5 million people have left Canada in the last number of years. Like, since Trudeau's power. Now, Canada's only got about 30 million people or so, haven't you? As a population.
We're over 40 now. We're 40 million.
40.
But
So
we're getting in almost 500,000 immigrants every year. And actually, I actually think it's going to even be more than that per year, because there was a period there just at the end of the year last year where it was 100,000 new immigrants each month, right?
Yeah.
So
I just wrote an article, Kerry, about the immigration stuff, because as an immigrant, I think it's easier for me to say stay obvious, but immigration, as it's been rolled out at the moment, is a solution to a problem that was created by the same people who created the problem.
That is true.
So you have had governments for 30 or 40 years creating tax that makes it unlivable for most families and most businesses. You've got over-regulation. It's made incredibly difficult to have families and to have kids. So you've got this huge depopulation problem in most Western countries. And now suddenly there's a solution, which is mass immigration and unmanaged immigration. And that's the problem. Immigrants are awesome and really help the community, but immigrants are often coming from a place that was worse than Canada. I think what we've seen, I saw a statistic as well, is a lot of immigrants who come to Canada don't last that long and they leave pretty quickly because this is not what they signed up for. But an immigrant wants to come to a place and give value to this they're living in. They want to be accepted and become a part of that community and part of that society. And that's what, like immigrants, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to be received and welcomed for the gift that we have. The challenge is when you do that en masse and you undermine the actual community that you're coming to, you don't end up having a community. You don't end up having a culture that you commit to and you can sort of adapt to and learn from. You end up in a situation where you have these ghettos of people who are not able to integrate into the society or share the values, because firstly, there's nowhere to live in those societies or communities. There's no work. So you create all these sort of underground economies and a dependence on things that are not full time. So unmanaged immigration, I think, is more likely going to create a greater burden and cost on the country. It just seems that a lot of politicians don't care. Politicians love a crisis or love an emergency because it gives them the power and the excuse to do pretty much whatever they want to do. So I once again, it's the solution to that problem is being able to make sure that as Alberta leaders in Alberta are the ones who are going to make decisions around immigration, and we know where they live and we can hold them accountable, and we need to have a mechanism. If they're not looking after our interests, we can move them on. But with the current situation where a lot of these decisions are getting made in Ottawa, which is countries away, it just doesn't seem sustainable. It doesn't seem fair, where the West is treated like pretty much like a colony of the East. And I say that coming from Africa, where we know what it's like to be abused by colonial overlords, where they play your resources and you get sweet bugger all back. That's, I think, what it is to be a Western Canadian.
Yeah. And really, that's the way
you get nothing back.
Eastern Canada designed Western Canada to basically take the resources and profit out east, right? And we never did have the number of MPs that we need in order to actually do anything, specifically Western provinces. Even if everything from Manitoba west was conservative, as an example, all it takes is just the hubs around Montreal and Toronto has the population there that all of a sudden now it would just end up being red. So, and I think a lot of the people that are watching definitely know that. And but I did want to at least go and just again show the website. It's good to go through this again. I'm happy that you were able to come on and talk about the initiatives of APP, because very often on these webinars we'll get into specifics about stuff. We'll talk about the WHO treaty, which is actually, we're going to find out in the next couple of weeks how that's worked out. We're going to find out policing, how Grand Prairie is handling their new police force. We do talk about those issues, but in the grand scheme of things, APP has the idea and the way forward. Specifically, if you go to the website and we talk about, I like the way this site's designed. If you have a conversation with your neighbor and maybe they don't really know what APP is about, you could just simply say, just go to the albertaprosperityproject.com and you will learn everything you need to do, right? And it talks about how do you get started, what's happening with the federal overreach, and why is that taking place. And then it goes into the specifics that we talk about. We talk about taxation, we talk about pension, we talk about policing, immigration, employment insurance. And we are definitely talking more. I've got guests lined up. And again, it's just an issue of getting them to be able to do a live on a Wednesday. We may end up doing an alternate day. We may end up doing some pre-recorded stuff and then doing it live. We're trying to organize all that stuff out. But these are the issues that are in the provincial wheelhouse. We have control, able to do this. Every province does. And if Alberta did it, and we were, if we somehow made it through and we're able to do our pension and able to do our taxation, I bet you most of the other provinces would say, well, if Alberta did it, I think we can probably do it too. And even though people think that by having our own pension or having our own taxation, we would actually rip Canada apart, I think we would save Canada. That's my own opinion on that. And we've got numbers to back that up, that if we ended up doing that in Alberta and every other province said, okay, you know what do we need in order to become independent? Well, we can run our own pension plan. We can do our own policing, etc. We can still share resources if it came down to that. But I think we would be a much stronger nation than we are right now. We would not be divided like we are right now with this federal government. And again, the conversations that I've had individually with people versus in groups is amazing. When you actually have a conversation with people individually about the ideas of the Alberta Prosperity Project, it's amazing how many people definitely agree with you. But they just don't know where to go, and they don't know how to get that word out, right? And that's why if we have,
no, absolutely. I haven't met a single person who doesn't agree with what we're doing, but a lot of the folk I speak to, in Calgary, are saying, I don't know how we could ever get there, because and I think that's where APP, we do have a strategy and a plan on how to do that. But a lot of people also think about independence, and they think that you're just now an island and you're not going to have any contact with anyone else. No country in the world that is like that. Every country has alliances and agreements and trade relationships. And so people try to manipulate the conversation, but no, I just think to be able to run our affairs and have that level of self-determination is brilliant for everyone, and there'll be awesome relationships with our neighboring provinces, states, or countries, we don't know what to call them, but that's not, we're not suddenly making enemies. We're just saying, look, we want to look after the future. We want to be able to make better decisions based on on our land and our context and our people. Yeah, we're not going to be by ourselves.
No, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I know the U.S. and Mexico would be welcome arms. Just I don't have to go through Ottawa to deal with resources and tourism and all that. Let's just talk direct to the source. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, people are concerned, we don't have access to the port, but BC wants access to the rest of Canada. So the most obvious, we have agreements and we have trade relations, and that's exactly what would happen with BC and with everyone else, like whether it's through the states. And we wouldn't be isolated. We'd be like every other country that smaller countries are per capita much more prosperous than large countries, and that's a fact.
Absolutely.
And so,
even just in Canada, if you go from BC to Manitoba to New Brunswick, like there is so much of a change within Canada, and I think that I love that. I love that fact that we're all Canadians, but we have such geographic and again different resources, different tourism, different cities, different municipalities. So much is different, and that's what is amazing about this country. But I think we've tried to make Canada as a giant shoehorn where everything fits into one package, and it doesn't. It really just does not. And I think if the provinces had more responsibility and more sovereignty over their jurisdictions, and I say this again and again, like tourism and resources, because those two are close to me, and but I'm sure everyone out there has different ideas of what sovereignty and what they could do in Alberta versus in Saskatchewan versus Manitoba. And I think that is that's why I like the Alberta Prosperity Project, because no matter what your ideas are in terms of big government control, and the APP has that solution by saying we just need more sovereign jurisdiction. We just want to, if we're independent within Canada, or we're able to control that, then great, then that's what we'll be part of. And yet, if we're not, then maybe we're just not meant to be part of Canada, right?
Yeah. And Kerry, just on that, so when we're implementing a large-scale change, most people are motivated away from pain than they are towards a goal or towards a vision, believe it or not. And so I'm really excited about the potential and the dream and the vision of where Alberta could be as a prosperous, sovereign sort of entity, as it were. But the reality is, if we don't get there, we are in for some incredibly dark times, and we can't pretend that doesn't exist. And, so we have to help people understand. We are wanting sovereignty not because it's just a dream world. We are wanting sovereignty to avoid all sorts of darkness and pain that are already here and are not going to be slowing down. And that may sound negative, but that's our reality. And it's a bit like finding the conversations to explain to people the actual dire reality of where we're in. I've got so many liberal friends, and I absolutely love them, and they're really smart. But their smarts are based on information that is limited and restricted, because at the end of the day, they have a faith and a trust in a media and a government. And I realize I try to convince them, and so where I'm at is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to convince people who are not even listening to the information. All the stuff that we talk about is we're putting it on a website, but it's on millions of other websites. This is all highly public information that's backed by research and everything else. And I'd just encourage people. We always gravitate to trying to convince someone who's the most opposed to our view, but we should just let them go and spend our time working with people who are closer and asking the questions that we can help them with. We don't want to try and manipulate people to try and join our movement. I think most Albertans are aware of these things, and I think we should be just working with them and trying to explain this is the plan, and let's see if we can get people to join us on this journey. And I don't spend any time trying to convince people who are not even bothered to look at alternative information. Like those people, it's a bit like trying to reason with someone who's part of a cult. There's just not that information, and unfortunately, you just say, okay, you're gonna have to learn that lesson the hard way, and you move on. You shake the dust off your feet, and you find somebody who's open to listen to you, and you make your life a better life, and you don't have all the heartache and headache of trying to convince people. People, if they want to learn, there's tons of this information out there. And like someone said, when the students are ready, the teachers will arise. And so I think we provide a service and help people who are ready to hear and ready to listen.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go back to the website. I left it on there for so long because I actually thought we would just jump right into this. But again, we put this website together with lots of resources, lots of news, and lots of information for people to go to see what the benefits of a sovereign Alberta really is. But what I wanted to show everybody is, and again, we're going to come up with little banners and stuff that we're still working on. But if you go to the Support Us, we'll actually talk about the Support 5 initiative that Jonathan was just explaining. Why Support 5? What is your impact? Versus most of us signed up for APP and various, maybe even political parties, and you basically do your membership. You give your $20, and then you don't do anything with it. You basically walk away, right? Oh, that's great. I'm so glad that they've taken my money, and hopefully they'll do something with it. The idea behind doing a monthly donation, and I know this for a fact because I see it in my own self all the time, is I subscribe to a lot of independent news sites. Every first of the month, every 8th of the month, or whatever it is that comes out, it comes out of my bank account. And I immediately go, oh, well, let's see. Western Standard has just come out. I wonder what Western Standard is doing today. And I'll actually go to the website and see what's going on because I paid for that subscription, right? I'm not advocating for Western Standard. It's just my experience with what a monthly donation does. And if you see that you're making a $5 monthly donation to Alberta Prosperity Project, you make your donation, you either get involved or maybe you forget about us for a month. And then when you realize, oh, my $5 donation came out of my bank account today, I wonder what APP is up to. You'll go to the website. Maybe you'll catch up on a couple of webinars. Maybe you'll look at some of the events that we've got planned. And the only way that happens is by having it come to your face all the time. And then one of the things that the donation does go to, not only just the costs associated with having this sort of project run. There's the website, there's the phone, the office supplies that you need for this. It's setting up streams, it's setting up Zoom meetings and all that. That costs a lot of money. And you don't think about it at the time because you don't really get a value for it, but it's a service. And those services cost money. And that's what the donation really goes towards, a lot of this stuff, because we need that money in order to bring you this type of stuff. I don't get paid. Jonathan doesn't get paid. I don't think anybody on the board gets paid at all. We are all volunteers. All that money that comes in is for infrastructure, this stuff that is able to bring you this information. The next goal after these donations is how do we get this APP message out there even bigger? So we've talked about maybe we put billboards up, maybe we do newspaper ads. Again, all of these things cost money that we really have not been able to do because we just don't have that influx of money coming in. We are not a political organization. I'm part of UCP, Wild Rose, Independence Party, and dare I even say the NDP. We've joked about that in the past. The reason is because I actually do want to see what they're doing on a regular basis. The NDP is doing a leadership campaign, and I'll bet you I get 3 emails a day from the NDP asking for the magical $5. Each one of those leadership campaign people, they are asking for money all the time. And and maybe the NDP is able to support that. Maybe they're able to do that. They're union based. They've got money coming in that way. But we are grassroots, and we need help. We need help by individual members, individual supporters. We need people able to step up with their companies in order to help us out. And especially if you enjoy what we're talking about and you see that this is a way forward, then I really urge you to get involved. If you can't get involved as being a volunteer, then the Support 5 does exactly what we want you to do. If you're able to make a donation, by all means, please. And here we talk about the goals and what we can do with those. We're also talking about, actually, does it show anymore else in here? Yeah, just so we've got monthly donations of the $5. And then weekly engagements is spend 5 minutes going on social media and sharing some of the stuff that we do. There's a lot of stuff that we do on X and Instagram and Facebook. And likewise, if you're able to somehow put that onto other social media programs, if you want to have your own Rumble channel and maybe broadcast that out, or have any TikTok, maybe you'll take one of our webinars and slice it up and put it on your own TikTok channel. Whatever it can possibly take to get that word out there. So that is the 5 minutes weekly engagement. And again, that to me is so important to be able to do that. Everyone seems to be on social media. And likewise, I say everyone seems to be on social media, but there are many conversations that I have with people that they are not on any social media whatsoever. And they only hear about us through word of mouth. Maybe their friends have gone to a meeting, and maybe they'll send us an email and then we get back to them. But we would still like to engage newspapers, any other print media, dare I say, mainstream media news. I don't like there are so many ways that we should get this word out about APP, and we're only limited by the amount of money that can come in order to pay for that. And then finally, the last one, of course, is the monthly recruitment. You know what? I'm actually going to zoom. I should have done this earlier. There you go. Make it a little bit bigger there. Getting out and bringing 5 people into the movement, and whether or not you have 5 friends or 5 relatives that would be interested, that's the only way that we're going to grow things. And that's a really good segue into our door knocking campaign. I actually thought David Laskowski would be on by now, but that's totally fine. He's probably busy doing stuff as most of us in this movement should be doing. Monthly recruitment, by bringing 5 more people into our movement each month, you grow our community strength and reach. And one of the ways that we can definitely do that is by doing our door knocking campaign. So we have a great group of people that have put together, it's called the Ambassador Committee, that have put together a door knocking campaign for the Alberta Prosperity Project. And I'm going to play just a little bit of an introduction video. I don't want to show the entire video because if you saw the whole video, why would you want to join? You would just go, oh, well, I've seen the video already. I can go and do this without joining. But the idea is that we want to have people get involved, going and door knocking, telling the story about APP, and not only getting people involved in terms of telling what APP is about, but getting them to volunteer, getting them to make donations, as well as the important thing, I'm just going to show this back up on the screen, is to talk about registering for your intent to vote yes in a referendum on Alberta's independence. So we've talked about this many, many times. We need about 600,000 signatures that will be taken up within 90 days in order to get this movement, this referendum, put on as a citizens' initiative to the legislature. And the only way that we can do that within 90 days would be to pre-collect the names and contact information of people that would be willing to vote yes in a referendum. And so that is the important part. If we had 600, 700,000 names and contact information, addresses of people that are able to say, yes, this is what we want to do, then we can actually go and start the Citizens Initiative. We have 90 days after that is called in order to gather those 600 actual wet signatures. We have pages in order to have people sign those. And then we'd be able to force a referendum and have an actual referendum question. Now, that is a lot of information, a lot of stuff that needs to be done prior to even getting to this point. Again, and we've said this many times, and I'll just reiterate that. Once we get those 600,000, let's say we do the referendum on independence, and we decide, maybe in October of 2025, we're going to actually have the referendum on independence question, maybe at the same time as the federal government election. Then we'd be able to say, great. Now, out of the 600,000, we now have, a 50, or pardon me, in the election, we end up doing the referendum question. We have a 50% plus one. That is all that's needed in order to actually push this through. Then we can actually start the negotiations with the federal government to say, these are our, dare I say, demands. These are our requests that we need to do. And then it gets into that whole back and forth, how would this work in terms of us doing our own anything, right? Because again, we're looking at pension, we're looking at policing. We have that jurisdiction. We can do that tomorrow. That we don't need the federal government to say yes or no to that. We could just go ahead and do that. But in terms of a referendum on Alberta's independence, we want to make sure that we have 50 plus one to say, yes, this is exactly what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm so passionate about this. I'm just rattling it off. And did you want to mention anything about that, Jonathan, before I play the video?
No, I think that's awesome. I think what I'm really hoping to do is build a movement that's bigger. If we can get 600,000 signatures, we should at least have a movement of about 200,000 committed people. If I go to the government today with 5,000 signatures, they can pay some attention to me. If I give them 200,000, 100,000, or 300,000 signatures, and we have a movement that's big, they'll definitely listen to us. Not only that, but we will at the same time have people on the ground that we can start finding our own leaders and sort of mentoring our own people who could be our future government leaders. But we can do that if we have mass and an engaged mass. So we initially want just a tick box. I would far prefer people to, support us and actively be part of our movement than just having a single tick. And I think if we can gather that momentum, I think we may, the government, my understanding is, call for a referendum on independence without it having to be a citizenship-led initiative. And so if we can have the movement, we can start to make significant change when you have that number of people. And I think, to be honest, so many Canadians are on with the message that we've got. It's really just about focusing on the vision and where we're wanting to go, and how making it as easy as possible for people to join us.
Good. So I'm going to just begin the training video. This is just a training video that we put together. Michelle Plant, who is the featured star in this, I'm sure she's going to hate me for doing this, but she did such a great job doing this. We put it together because we were requested by the volunteers. Do you have any material that we can take a look at and sort of how to fill out the forms and what do we actually speak about? We have all that information. We've got, if you wanted to walk up with a page in your hand that you could read verbatim, you could do that. It probably wouldn't be very engaging with the person you're knocking the door on because you're staring down at a page, but it gives you the talking points. And that's kind of what the important thing is. We would do this training with you guys, and we do need a group of people out there in order to do this. So I'm just gonna show this to you, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about what you guys are looking at.
Thank you for volunteering with the Alberta Prosperity Project's Intent to Vote door-to-door campaign. Your efforts are crucial in helping us reach the target required to launch and succeed with the referendum on independence, ultimately giving Alberta the leverage required to restructure our relationship with Canada, giving Alberta the much-needed autonomy in managing both our affairs and our resources. The majority of Albertans don't realize that there is a way out of the many concerns we have with the actions and agenda of the federal government. But there is a solution, we have it, and that's what makes this campaign so exciting.
It's important to be prepared when going door to door. Here are some tips. If you have any Alberta Prosperity Project clothing and or merchandise, please wear it or bring it with you, as it can help identify you as a legitimate representative of APP. Go with a partner. It's always good to have someone else with you for both safety and support. Choose the right time. The best time to go door to door is between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. any day of the week. Please avoid early mornings and late evenings when people may be busy or not want to be disturbed. Please use sidewalks and streetways safely and avoid walking across people's lawns. Bring materials. Make sure to bring all materials provided to you and your dog.
So these really are the materials. So you end up getting door knockers that if somebody's not at home, you can leave that with them. Or if you want to leave more information, you can give them a door knocker as well as some of the other pages that we'll be talking about.
Document package that can help you explain the campaign and its goals. This includes a clipboard, pens, script, mapping and data collection sheets, intent to vote, leaflets, and door hangers. Practice your pitch. Take some time to practice your message.
This is exactly the pitch that we tell people that it's scripted and you can do that. So that's really all I'm going to show. The video is about 10, 15 minutes long. We don't have to go into that. But I mean, if you want to get involved and you want to be totally grassroots, knocking at people's doors and spreading the message, and you're excited about that, please, please, please get a hold of us. Contact at albertaprosperity.com. And we will be setting up groups all over Alberta. As a matter of fact, the actual door knocking campaign has started. They did start at the beginning of May, and they have hit a few communities. They've been kind of ironing out the materials that are required, as well as going through the training. But we are ramping up, and I think like within the next couple of weeks, we are going to go full bore. So you will be seeing door knockers on doors. And hopefully we'll have a buzz out there that people will be quite excited. And one of the first questions, of course, they ask is, have you ever heard of the Alberta Prosperity Project? And as sad as it is for us to say, the majority have not. But can you imagine if we had this wave of people out there, door knockers and people knocking at the doors and giving the word about what's going on? That would reach people that are not on social media. And obviously we don't have billboards yet. We don't have the money for that yet. And then people will be going, yes, I've heard the Alberta Prosperity Project. Tell me more, or how can I get involved? And that's really what the main goal of the whole door knocking campaign. Harold asks, will this take all summer? Yes, it will take all summer. Now that doesn't mean that you have to invest your entire summer. So these are questions that have actually been asked and even answered in the video, I know. But so how much time do I need to devote, and how do I get involved? But you know, I'm limited in terms of what I can do. You know what? Just give what you can. I used to be a canvasser for the diabetes. I used to be a canvasser for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. And really, I just ended up going up and down my street. And so say 30 houses. And it might take you one night to do it. It might take you multiple nights. The idea is that you actually knock on the doors and talk to people. As a last resort, I would guess, would be if they haven't shown up at the door, or they're not answering the door after a few times, then just leave a door knocker at the door. But the idea is that you want to actually have a conversation with someone. And if that works, that you only do 30 houses, then that's great. Or if you can only do 10 houses, or maybe you live in an apartment block and you want to do that apartment block, that's great. But here's also another concept, another idea. Some people just aren't comfortable going around their own neighborhood and talking. And as bizarre as that sounds, and I respect that some people just like, they don't want to be singled out on their neighborhood, that they're part of this movement or whatever, however you want to call it. So then request to go somewhere else, go to another neighborhood, go to another apartment block if you can get access to it. That, whatever it takes in order to get that movement out, I think that is that's, to me, quite important, right? People say maybe rent a big hall, more people will come. Yeah, we can rent. The important thing is, you see where it says rent, right? Rent. How do you rent something? It requires money. It also requires time. It requires people involved. We need volunteers. If we had a hall that filled 500 people, I'm going to say that's easily $1,000, $1,500, if not more, in Calgary or Edmonton. Maybe a little bit less in a smaller center. But then you need volunteers. You would need, like, honestly, you'd need at least a dozen or 24 volunteers for a crowd that size in order to get the message out, to put chairs up, to make coffee and dainties and whatever else that's needed in order to draw people out to a meeting. So I think if you've got great ideas like this, I think, Alan, I want you to get involved. If you're not involved already, I want you to get involved. Do you have anything else you want to say about any of that, Jonathan?
No, I think those are great ideas. I think what I'm focusing on for the next 3 months is a sprint to make sure that the vision that is working, so that when we have big meetings that we invest in, that we can actually maximize the benefit of that when we have those slightly expensive events. So that's what we're focusing on now. We're getting all the tools and all the mechanical room set up, so that we're ready to really launch in a big way. And then, hopefully having tons of big meetings, and hopefully having lots of people, including yourself, make sure we're presenting at these things. I think we need to build as many leaders as possible who are happy to present and tell their story. We've got a story to tell as to why we're supporting the movement, and it's a very individual story for everyone. So, I think we're absolutely going to get there. We're just we're trying to build the car before we start to drive, in some ways, with the sort of reset of the website. So that's a lot of work, but we're getting there.
Yeah. I'm just going to go back and show a couple of questions and comments. And a few people have asked this, and Marie was the last one asked, so that's why she gets the claim, the fame up there. Marie says, nobody has an extra dime today. I agree. People are all struggling, especially with the federal government and the way that they've done the carbon tax, etc., which leads me to believe, if that's what they're doing now, imagine what they're going to be doing in 5 years. Are we able to just sit back and go, well, I can't afford that dime? You know what? If you can't afford that dime, we got your back. Maybe bring the internet, bring the intent to vote poster to your work. So this poster, right? Print that off and take it to work. Post that somewhere. Maybe that's all you can do. And if that's all you can do, then thank you from everybody at the Alberta Prosperity Project, because you are going to get involved. And I think that's, again, if you can get involved, just get involved. Whatever you can possibly do.
Hey,
go ahead, Jonathan.
We do have a program that we haven't advertised much, but if we have people who don't have money but want to have a network that they want to recruit from, we have a commission structure and a contract, I believe, that if people are interested in doing that, like if we would pay a percentage to people based on the memberships they could generate. There is a revenue opportunity for people who are looking for that sort of work. It is a commission-based type thing, and that's fairly common within the sort of not-for-profit charitable sector. But don't let money stop you from engaging with your chapter and just getting involved. Hopefully you may even find someone who's connected in the chapter who finds you a job, or there's all sorts of things. The key for me is just developing that movement, and it's not about the money. No one's making any money from this thing. It's really just about let's build a movement of people. And, people can contribute money. Some people can contribute time. It sort of just depends, and people in a different place.
So we've been talking now for about an hour and a half. I'm going to try and wrap things up in about 10 minutes, but I do want to address some of the questions that came up early, because if they are important questions, and I think that we need to discuss them, because some people just don't understand. Maybe after listening to us for the hour and a half, you do, but I think it's important to at least talk about this. So Pietro asked, one of the first questions this evening was, did Chris quit? And how come members were not asked to vote for a new CEO? Do you want me to handle this one, Jonathan? I feel I could answer this one.
No, my understanding, because it was explained to me, but my understanding was Chris had always been an interim CEO, because he's had a job and a work that he has to keep going.
That's right.
I offered. I said, look, if you need another interim CEO, if Chris has to step down, I'm more than happy to do the same thing. I see my role as being permanent unless the movement wants me to continue helping. But I've got a life and a family, and I've also got to generate some income at some point, and I'm involved in trying to get some projects off the ground. So everyone is a volunteer. The political body, so there's no voting on that sort of thing. But if someone wants to step up and just speak to your chapter leaders or get involved, and it's ideal that I would say it's a safer bet to recruit someone who we know has been involved, and if they say they're going to do something, that they've done it and that they're reliable and consistent. So I would, if you want the job, you're more than welcome to it. I'm doing the best I can for as long as I can with what I've got, and if anyone comes along that wants to take that, and I'm passionate about the movement to move it forward, but I'm not looking for a job. So I think that's always sort of been the attitude: is we here to serve. No one's looking for any titles, because to be honest,
and I think even
really mean anything, to be honest.
With you and your history, so it's not like you just were helicoptered in from somewhere else, and there you are, you're the CEO. You had a bit of a history with being a chapter leader and being a go-getter and wanting to set up and deal with other chapters outside of your area. And it just seemed to be a really good fit for us, especially right now, right? We were looking at what are our goals for this year, and our goals were, of course, to expand our membership, get people to sign up for the referendum. And in order to do that, we need some money, we need volunteers, and you came up with some great ideas, and the rest is history. So I think I can just leave it with that one for now. Lisa says, Alberta independence will never happen. Remember, Quebec tried. What a waste of time and resources. We get these comments quite often. And well, if you think it's a waste of time and resources, I feel sad for you, because obviously you are a Debbie Downer, and you have maybe no ideas on how to get through all of this. At least at the Alberta Prosperity Project, we have ideas, and I want to see these fulfilled. And I will do.
Well, I'd add, Kerry, we actually have a plan as well.
Yes,
so,
and absolutely.
I think most people don't understand that we're not the only piece of land in this world in the last 30, 40 years that has become independent. I think the plan is to make the decision. Here's if we think backwards. Let's say I'm Joe Bloggs. I'm standing at the voting table to vote for an independent Alberta. What's going to determine my vote? Firstly, I've got to feel that if I'm going to be in an independent Alberta, I've got to feel safer, and I'm going to feel more excited about that decision than I do. And I have to be fearful of becoming independent. And so that's a big objective. So if I'm at that voting booth, if what Daniel Smith has followed through with the Alberta Sovereignty Act and all those things that we've spoken about, policing, taxation, employment, we've got a handle on health, all those things are already under the jurisdiction and being effectively managed by Alberta. Well, if I'm standing at the referendum table and there's an opportunity to vote, well, it's not a big decision, because we're pretty much doing everything already. That's right. Goal. That for me is where I want to get to. And
Yep.
so there absolutely is a plan. And I think Lisa Sims, I think she does express the feelings of a lot of Albertans, is because this has been attempted so many times and most people have failed. It's pretty easy to articulate why they've failed. Most times is they've split up over very secondary, third level issues, and moves divide, and you have people who come in and sort of divide and conquer. So that's completely possible. I think there hasn't been a movement that's actually had a strategy and plan like the APP. Like, I'm not going to waste my time about something that I don't think is going to be successful. I'm in it to win it. We had Brexit. We've had huge decisions made. I think
that's right. Yeah,
that's fine. But that's fine. If Lisa wants to be part of the conversation, that's fine. And maybe at some point, as with a lot of other Albertans, we'll see, oh, actually, maybe this is possible. But that's where I want to build a movement so that we can put as much pressure on Neil Smith and support to follow through with what she's committed to.
That's right.
That will be huge, and that'll be a huge thing for us.
Yeah. So, and one thing
we're all volunteering our time. We're donating our money. Like, there's no waste of anything. We don't have time for that.
No, that is true. One thing that Lisa may be thinking, Alberta independence will never happen. Remember, Quebec tried, but when they tried, look at what they got. They got their own pension plan. They've got extra seats at in the House House Commons. They've got a lot of other stuff that all the other provinces don't, right? And maybe that's what our independence really is that we end up just getting a little bit more out of the federal government. I have my own take on what independence mean, and I'm sure Jonathan has his own, and I'm sure all the people watching have their own idea too. And that's great. And we'll just kind of see what we're able to throw together once a referendum on independence has actually been put out. So just a couple more questions here. Francis said for separation, they have to have 7 provinces agree to it, but independence maybe not, because the province isn't leaving Canada. So again, that is if we actually opened up the Constitution in order to do this. If we use the Sovereignty Act and we end up saying, you know what, we're going to do this based upon, we've got control of our own pension, got control of our own policing, yada, yada, then we'd be able to just go ahead and do that. The issue comes down, if you remember the failed Charlottetown and Moose Lake Accords, that's what they were trying to do, is to open up the Constitution and change it. That never happened. But the reason it didn't happen was there was no real big winner. Quebec was where they were. But in our situation, hey, if we decided to open up the Constitution, then it would end up being Alberta and Quebec probably looking for similar things. And we'd still run into the situation of the 7 provinces, and over 50% of the population agree to that. Yeah, I agree. That will not happen. There's a very slim chance that will happen. But if we end up going through and say we want our own independence, and if we decide to become a Republic of Alberta, or however it ends up being, then we don't have to go through that whole scenario. So I just wanted to bring that up, that people may misinterpret opening up what the difference is between opening up the Constitution and doing that versus just either a separation or an independence referendum. So, and then somebody else even replied back. So for separation, we need a provincial government that will hold a referendum to vote 51% to win and clear question. Yes. Government will have it now. Do they? They are our biggest problem. And I think the second part to that question that's kind of buried into that from Murray is if we were to actually do this this question, would the provincial government become the federal government? And no, that's not the way it ends up being. And I've had this conversation with a few people. Daniel Smith would not become the Prime Minister of Alberta. Chances are this would end up taking 2 or 3 election cycles to happen anyways. So we don't know exactly where we would be in 5 or 10 years. If you are one of the people that, you're afraid of Agenda 2030, We are at 6 years, actually less than 6 years. So we have to get this in place before any of that comes along. So that's the other urgency of this. And I think if people don't realize that there is an urgency of this, they'll be complacent and apathetic and just sit back and do nothing. And Jonathan, myself, and everybody that's involved with APP realize that that's not what we can do. We just can't sit back and wait for this to steamroll us. We need to get out there and start making headway and talking to people. So I think that's all I needed to do with that. Anything else you wanted to mention there, Jonathan?
No, I think it's a challenge for a lot of people to get their heads around how this actually can happen. But there are a number of significant independence movements happening right now around the world. A lot of people don't forget the fact that a lot of the countries that we have today were only actually created after the Second World War, where smaller nations were forced together into large countries. So decoupling that it's not impossible. It's been done. It will be done, and it will continue to be done. It's just that for a lot of folk, they don't see it or understand how those mechanics happen. And it can happen very quickly. You vote a party in that on their election has said, we will declare independence. If that party gets in with the majority and they do that, they theoretically could do that. Now they don't ask. They're not at that point asking federal government for permission. They're just going to declare independence, and now we're going to live with the consequence and make it happen. So that there are scenarios to that potentially happening if you have strong enough leaders and the people vote for a party that does exactly that. And that can happen really quickly. Ideally, by the time you do that, you'd want to have your ducks in a row and make sure you've got your policing, your taxation, all those systems lined up. And that makes that decision a lot easier. I think the chances, if you can see the opposition of the federal government just to the pension, now they're trying to change the law to block that.
Yes, they are.
No one's going to be enthusiastic around this colony of Eastern Canada that they've been plundering for the last number of years to, suddenly become self-determining. So I think we've got to be planning for every eventuality. But I do think there is a scenario where if Canada continues down the trajectory and gets as bad as I think it will inevitably get, I think you're going to have a highly motivated electoral citizens living in Alberta who'll be more motivated than ever towards a drastic action. At the moment, most people are just surviving, but when people stop surviving, things change pretty quickly. And politicians need to be ready for that. What I'm hoping is we'll have a movement in place to be able to help manage that transition in a way that's peaceful and I'm not going to be telling my grandkids that I gave up on their future because it was difficult or hard.
I agree.
We grow by doing difficult and hard things, and
that's right.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on and telling us a little bit about yourself and what's happening with Alberta Prosperity Project. We do have events through the summer, and one of the things that I did want to at least bring up here, I'm just going to go back to the website just so that you can see what I'm doing here. You go back to the website here, and if you go down to the upcoming events page over here, click on that, and it will tell you what's going on, chapter meetings, as well as a few other things. The thing I'm most excited about right now is we have our annual meeting on June 1st. It's a new SREPTA. And if you click on there, it tells you what's going on. Registration, we're having an interactive strategy session. Jonathan's going to be running that. We're also doing silent auction. So if anybody's interested in putting some silent auction items, by all means, please get a hold of us at contact at Alberta Prosperity Project or Alberta Prosperity. I'll contact at albertaprosperity.com. We've got a lunch. We're also having some speakers. We've got Dennis, Modry, Chris Scott will be handing the reins over to Jonathan. John's going to be talking a little bit more about Sport 5, etc. And we'll have Michael Wagner, who has been on our webinar a few times, talking about the independence movement in Alberta and where it's going now and why he thinks it's even more important now than it was in the past. And then we've got a little bit of a social happening in the afternoon too, with yours truly spinning some tunes while you guys are talking amongst yourselves. We'll give you some topics and just be social. It's you can't be it can't feel like work all the time, right? And so when you come out to this event, it's going to be a great social atmosphere as well. So please get involved with that. And if you scroll down a little bit more onto this page here, it gives you a little bit more in the poster. And tickets are $50, and it does include lunch. And please sign up. And look, we've got 125 people so far that have bought tickets, so that's awesome. And I'm not sure what else to tell you about it, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to hanging out with people that are all APP members. Jonathan and Mr. Chris Scott again, Dr. Dennis Modry, and you can even come and say hi to me every now and then. That would be great to have everybody there. So
this has been an awesome experience. This is my first podcast ever.
The first podcast. It'll be first of hundreds.
Thanks, Kerry. You've done an awesome job. I appreciate it.
That's great. Well, thank you again, and you guys. Again, we do this every Wednesday. The next Wednesday, I had a guest scheduled that has now had to be changed. I will figure something out, so we'll do this. But yeah, we do this consistently every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Rain, shine, snow, whatever it takes to get the word out and to let people know what's going on in and around Alberta politically, and there even more so. And with that, I'm going to wish everyone a happy Wednesday. And dare I say, go Oilers? Should I say go Oilers? I don't know. That I'm from Calgary, so go Flames. But that's not going to happen. So go Oilers. The nice thing will be there will be a Canadian team in the third round of the Stanley Cup, whether it's the Vancouver Canucks or Edmonton Oilers. I'm excited for that, and hopefully we'll make it to the Stanley Cup at some point. So with that, you guys have an amazing rest of your night, and we'll see you guys again next week. Cheers.